They tell you that love conquers all, that devotion, loyalty, and pure intention will shield you from the cruelest tongues in society. But standing in the crimson drawing room of Harlington House, with rain lashing against the windows and the Dowager Duchess of Harlington's words slicing through the air like sharpened glass, 23-year-old Constance Hartley learned that love was no armor at all. "You are unfit to be a duchess." The words hung in the perfumed air, each syllable weighted with aristocratic disdain. The dowager stood before the marble fireplace, draped in black silk that rustled with her barely contained fury. Her jewels caught the lamplight, diamonds at her throat winking like malicious eyes. She was a portrait of wealth and breeding, everything Constance was not. Constance's fingers trembled where they clutched her simple cotton skirts. She had known this moment would come. Known it the first time Adrian Montrose, the Duke of Harlington, had looked at her across her father's modest bookshop with something warmer than casual interest. Known it when he'd returned day after day, trading philosophy for smiles. Known it when he'd kissed her in the rain outside St. Mary's Church and whispered that she was the only real thing in his gilded hollow world. But knowing and enduring were vastly different creatures. "Your father sells books for a living," the dowager continued, her voice dripping with venom disguised as reason. "You have no dowry, no connections, no understanding of what it means to manage an estate of this magnitude. You will humiliate my son. You will destroy a legacy that has survived 3 centuries." The storm outside seemed to echo the tempest in Constance's chest. She wanted to defend herself, to speak of her education, her capability, her genuine affection for Adrian. But her throat had closed around the words, trapping them like birds in a cage. Footsteps sounded in the corridor, heavy, purposeful, familiar. The door opened. Adrian filled the doorway, rain-soaked and breathless, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His gray eyes found Constance first, then moved to his mother with an expression Constance had never seen before. Something cold and final, like winter settling over the moors. "What," he said quietly, "is happening here?" The dowager's spine stiffened, as though Adrian had slapped her. She turned to her son with the practiced grace of a woman who had spent 40 years bending the world to her will. "I am saving you from a ruinous mistake," she said, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. "This girl has bewitched you with her novelty. In 6 months, you will tire of her simplicity. In a year, you will resent the embarrassment she brings to our name." Adrian stepped fully into the room, water dripping from his greatcoat onto the Persian carpet. He looked like something wild had followed him in from the storm, untamed, dangerous, beautiful in his fury. "You presume to know my heart better than I do, mother? I know duty. I know legacy. I know that passion fades, and all that remains is breeding and station." The dowager's gaze cut to Constance. "She has neither." Constance found her voice at last. It emerged steadier than she felt. "Then I shall leave." Both pairs of eyes snapped to her. "I will not be the cause of discord between a mother and son," she continued, lifting her chin though her heart was fracturing. "Your Grace, I release you from any promises made. I wish you every happiness." She moved toward the door, but Adrian was faster. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and caught her wrist. Not roughly, but with enough urgency to still her flight. "No." The single word contained multitudes. Command. Desperation. Certainty. He turned to his mother, his fingers still circled around Constance's wrist like a brand. "You have ruled this family since father died. You chose my tutors, my friends, my pursuits. You orchestrated every moment of my life until I could scarcely breathe without your approval." His voice dropped to something raw and honest. "But you do not choose my wife." The dowager's face paled. "Adrian, I am done, mother. Done pretending. Done performing. Done being your perfectly crafted son." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Rain hammered against the windows, nature itself seeming to hold its breath for what would come next. The dowager recovered first, as women of her station always did. You would throw away everything for a bookseller's daughter. Your standing, your reputation, the respect of every peer in England? Yes, Adrian said simply. Without hesitation, Constance felt the tremor in his hand where it held hers. He was terrified, she realized. Not of his mother's wrath, but of losing what they had found together, something neither wealth nor title could purchase. "Then you are a fool," the dowager whispered, "and I wash my hands of this catastrophe." She swept toward the door, but paused at the threshold. When she looked back, there was something almost like grief in her eyes. When she leaves you, and she will, once she discovers that love does not pay creditors or silence gossips, do not come begging for my forgiveness. The door closed with a definitive click. Constance exhaled, unaware she'd been holding her breath. Adrian released her wrist and stepped back, raking a hand through his wet hair. The space between them suddenly felt vast. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I should have warned you, prepared you. I thought if I simply presented you to her, she would see what I see. Your intelligence, your kindness, your remarkable mind." "What do you see?" Constance asked, the question emerging smaller than intended. He looked at her then, truly looked, and she felt exposed down to her bones. "I see the woman I want beside me for every sunrise, every crisis, every mundane breakfast, and extraordinary triumph." He took a breath. "I see home, Constance. In a life full of marble and gold, you are the only warmth I have ever known." Her throat ached with unshed tears. "Your mother is not wrong. I know nothing of managing estates or hosting lords. I cannot dance properly. I mix up forks. Then we shall learn together." Adrian crossed to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the storm-darkened glass. The firelight painted him in shades of amber and shadow, a study in contrasts. This man who held unimaginable power yet confessed to feeling powerless. "When I was 12, he began, his voice distant. "My father took me hunting at our northern estate. I shot a deer, my first clean kill. He was so proud." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That night I cried myself sick. Could not eat venison for years after. My mother said I was weak, unsuited for the brutality required of men in our position." Constance moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his confession. "She taught me to bury softness, to see sentiment as failure." He turned to face her. "Then I walked into your father's shop looking for a first edition Marlowe, and you laughed at something your father said. This pure, unguarded sound, and every carefully constructed wall I had built came crashing down." "Adrian, let me finish." He closed the distance between them. "You asked what I see. I see a woman who reads Greek philosophy for pleasure, who debates theology with bishops and wins, who treats a street urchin with the same courtesy as an earl because you understand that dignity is not conferred by birth." His voice roughened. "I see someone brave enough to love a man taught never to feel." The rain had softened to a steady rhythm. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. Constance reached up and touched his cheek, feeling the tension in his jaw, the barely leashed emotion. "I am terrified," she admitted, "of failing you, of proving your mother right, of being crushed by a world I do not understand. Then we shall be terrified together." He caught her hand, pressing her palm flat against his chest where his heart thundered. "But we shall not be alone." The following days unfurled with agonizing slowness. Adrian had sent word to his solicitor, instructing him to prepare the marriage contracts. The dowager had retreated to the family's London residence, her absence a cold and calculated punishment. Constance remained at her father's shop, surrounded by the familiar scent of leather and old paper, trying to reconcile the woman she had been with the woman she was becoming. Her father, Thomas Hartley, said little. He was a man of books, not speeches, but she caught him watching her with an expression that held both pride and sorrow, the look of a parent seeing their child step into a world beyond their protection. "You do not have to do this, my dear," he said one evening as they closed the shop. Rain misted the cobblestones outside. "Love is a fine thing. but it is not armor against cruelty. Is it not? Constance carefully shelved a volume of Wordsworth. You loved Mama. She died when I was 6. Yet you speak of her still with such tenderness it makes the air feel sacred. Thomas's weathered face softened. Your mother was a force of nature. The vicar's daughter who married beneath her station to wed a poor scholar. He smiled at the memory. Her family disowned her, called me unworthy, but she never once regretted her choice. How did she bear it, the rejection? She decided their opinions were simply noise. What mattered was the life we built, our conversations, our laughter. You. He touched Constance's cheek gently, but she was strong, Constance. Stronger perhaps than she should have needed to be. The bell above the door chimed. Adrian stepped inside, rain damp and urgent. Forgive the intrusion, Mr. Hartley. He turned to Constance. My mother has called a gathering of the family. She means to publicly denounce our engagement unless I agree to certain conditions. Constance felt ice slide down her spine. What conditions? That you sign a contract forfeiting any claim to the Harlington fortune. That you reside in the country estate, away from London society. That any children be raised primarily by her approved tutors and governesses. The cruelty took her breath away. Thomas Hartley set down the book he'd been holding with deliberate care. Your Grace, I believe you should leave my shop. Adrian blinked, clearly unprepared for the dismissal. Mr. Hartley, my daughter is not a problem to be managed with contracts and conditions. The scholar's voice remained gentle, but steel ran beneath it. She is a woman of considerable intellect and worth. If your family cannot recognize that, then perhaps this union is ill-advised. Papa, Constance protested, but her father raised a hand. No, my dear. I have been silent long enough. He looked at Adrian. I have watched you court my daughter with poetry and philosophy. I believed your regard genuine, but at the first challenge from your mother, you bring us negotiations. Terms of surrender? Adrian's face had gone pale. That is not, I came to warn Constance. To prepare her for a lifetime of being found wanting? Thomas shook his head. I was poor when I married above my station, Your Grace, but I never asked my wife to diminish herself to ease others' discomfort. The accusation hung between them, sharp and true. Constance watched Adrian struggle with it, saw the moment her father's words struck home. Rain continued its percussion against the windows. A log shifted in the small fireplace, sending up sparks. Finally, Adrian spoke. You are right, Mr. Hartley. Absolutely right. He turned to Constance, and she saw something settle in his expression, a decision made, a line drawn. I came here frightened, afraid of losing my family's approval, afraid of the scandal, but I was asking the wrong question. What question should you ask? Constance whispered. Not how to make everyone comfortable with our marriage. His gray eyes held hers. But whether I am brave enough to deserve you. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. Then, in her father's modest bookshop, surrounded by philosophy and poetry and the quiet wisdom of accumulated words, Adrian Montrose, Duke of Harlington, went down on one knee. The velvet box opened with a soft click. Inside, nestled against cream silk, sat a ring unlike any Constance had ever seen. Not the ostentatious diamonds favored by society, but a deep blue sapphire surrounded by small pearls, the colors of midnight and moonlight. This was my grandmother's, Adrian said, his voice steady despite his vulnerable position. She was a merchant's daughter who married my grandfather during a scandal that nearly destroyed the family. They loved each other for 47 years. He looked up at Constance. She told me once that the bravest thing she ever did was refuse to apologize for being herself. Thomas Hartley moved quietly to the back of the shop, giving them privacy while remaining present, a father's careful balance. I will not ask you to sign contracts that diminish your worth, Adrian continued. I will not ask you to hide in the country like a shameful secret. I will not allow my children to be raised by anyone who views their mother as inferior. His hand trembled slightly. I am asking you to marry me, Constance Hartley, knowing that I come with a venomous mother, a judgmental society, and more flaws than I can catalog. But I promise you this. I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice." Constance felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness but from the profound relief of being seen. "Truly seen. Your mother will never accept me," she said softly. "Then she will not be welcome in our home. Society will cut us. Then we shall find better company. You will lose friends, alliances, perhaps even your seat in Parliament." Adrian stood, the ring box still open in his palm. "Constance, I have spent 28 years collecting things that mean nothing. Titles, properties, investments, all of it hollow." He stepped closer. "You are the first real thing I have ever wanted. The first choice I have made from love rather than duty." She took the ring from the box with shaking fingers. The Dowager's gathering took place 3 days later at the Harlington London residence, a palatial townhouse in Mayfair that breathed old money and older expectations. Constance arrived with Adrian, wearing a dress of deep green silk that her father had insisted on purchasing despite the expense. It was simple compared to the gowns she would encounter, but it was hers, chosen with care and worn with dignity. The drawing room glittered with aristocracy. Aunts and uncles, cousins twice removed, influential family friends, all summoned to witness what the Dowager clearly intended as Constance's public humiliation and Adrian's capitulation. The Dowager stood beside the fireplace, draped in burgundy silk, her face a mask of aristocratic superiority. She did not acknowledge Constance's arrival. "Now that we are all assembled," she began, her voice carrying across the room, "we may address this unfortunate situation. My son, in a moment of youthful passion, has become entangled with a woman of unsuitable origins." Constance felt every eye turned toward her. Her instinct was to shrink, to disappear. Instead, she remembered her mother, the vicar's daughter who had chosen love over approval, and lifted her chin. "However," the Dowager continued, "I have prepared a solution that will allow Adrian to satisfy his attachment while protecting the family name." She gestured to a side table where documents lay spread. "A morganatic arrangement. Miss Hartley may marry my son but will hold no title, receive no inheritance, and bear children who cannot inherit the dukedom." The cruelty of it struck like a physical blow. To be married yet unrecognized. To bear children deemed unworthy of their own father's name. Adrian's hand found Constance's, his grip fierce. "Mother," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "you have orchestrated your last performance." The room fell silent. Even the fire seemed to cease its crackling. "I beg your pardon." The Dowager's eyebrows rose. "I said no." A ripple of shock moved through the assembled family. The Dowager's face remained impassive, but Constance saw the flash of panic in her eyes, the look of a woman realizing her control was slipping. "Adrian, you are not thinking clearly." "I am thinking clearly for the first time in my life." He turned to address the room, still holding Constance's hand. "You all know me as the dutiful son, the perfect heir. I have attended every tedious function, married every conversation to propriety, buried every genuine feeling beneath the performance of aristocratic detachment." His voice grew stronger. "I am finished performing." An elderly woman in the corner, Adrian's great-aunt Philippa, made a small sound of approval. "This woman," Adrian continued, gesturing to Constance, "has more wisdom in her smallest finger than most of you possess in your entire pedigreed bodies. She reads languages you cannot pronounce. She debates philosophy you cannot fathom. And she has shown me what it means to live with integrity rather than simply existing within marble walls." "She is a shopkeeper's daughter," the Dowager hissed. "And Christ was a carpenter's son," Aunt Philippa interjected dryly. "Do sit down, Cordelia. Your theatrics are exhausting." Several family members shifted uncomfortably. Constance realized with surprise that not everyone supported the Dowager's crusade. Adrian's uncle, Lord Pemberton, cleared his throat. "The boy is of age, Cordelia. His choice of bride is precisely that, his choice. His choice will destroy this family's standing." "Our standing," Aunt Philippa said. rising from her chair with surprising vigor for a woman of 70. "Survived your father's gambling debts, your brother's illegitimate children, and cousin Theodore's rather spectacular arrest for public drunkenness. I believe we shall survive Adrian marrying an educated, respectable woman who happens to lack a title." Constance watched the dowager's composure crack. "You would all support this madness?" "We would support Adrian's happiness," Lord Pemberton said simply. "Perhaps it is time we valued that over empty tradition." The dowager looked around the room seeking allies, finding none. The gathering dissolved into smaller conversations, the tension breaking like a fever. Several family members approached Constance with cautious warmth, testing perhaps whether she would flinch or hold steady under scrutiny. She held steady, and Philippa gripped her hand with surprising strength. "I like you, girl. You have spine. Cordelia has run roughshod over this family for too long. She needs opposition." "I do not wish to be opposition, my lady. I only wish to love Adrian." "Then you are already wiser than most brides." Philippa's eyes, sharp as cut glass, studied her. "But make no mistake, child, this will not be easy. Society is a beast that devours what it does not understand. You will face whispers, cuts, carefully orchestrated humiliations." "I know." "Do you?" Philippa's expression softened slightly. "Your education is impressive, but it did not teach you how a duchess without breeding is treated at court, how invitations will arrive late or not at all, how other women will smile while shredding your reputation behind fans." Constance met her gaze. "My mother was disowned for marrying my father. She spent her life excluded from the world she knew. But she told me once, before she died, that she would make the same choice 1,000 times over." She glanced at Adrian across the room, watching him speak quietly with his uncle. "I understand the cost, my lady. I choose to pay it." Philippa smiled, genuine and warm. "Then you will do nicely." She squeezed Constance's hand once more. "Come to me when Cordelia's poison becomes too much. I am old enough to say whatever I please, without consequence." The dowager herself had retreated to the far corner, surrounded by two sympathetic cousins. She looked diminished somehow, her power revealed as the illusion it had always been, sustained only by others' willingness to submit. Adrian returned to Constance's side, his hand finding hers automatically. "Are you well?" "I am surprised. I expected them to side with your mother. Some fear her, but more fear becoming her, bitter, controlling, alone." He brushed his thumb across her knuckles. "Shall we leave this circus?" They married 3 weeks later, in the small parish church near her father's shop. Not the grand Westminster affair the dowager would have orchestrated, but something intimate and real. Aunt Philippa attended, as did several of Adrian's more progressive relatives. Lord Pemberton gave a surprisingly eloquent toast at the modest wedding breakfast. The dowager did not attend. She had removed to the family's Scottish estate, her absence, a final act of protest that fooled no one. Constance stood in her wedding dress, cream silk with delicate lace, simple and beautiful, and felt no regret. Thomas Hartley wept openly as he walked her down the aisle, pride and sorrow mingling in his eyes. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered, before placing her hand in Adrian's. The vows were traditional: love, honor, cherish. But when Adrian slipped his grandmother's sapphire ring onto her finger, Constance understood these were not mere words, but promises forged in the fire of opposition. "Are you frightened?" Adrian asked as they lay together, moonlight streaming through the small window. Constance considered the question honestly. "I am terrified of failing you, of not being the Duchess your legacy deserves." "My legacy," he said, pulling her closer, "is not measured in titles or properties. It will be measured in how we love, how we raise our children, whether we leave the world softer than we found it." He kissed her forehead gently. "You could never fail me, Constance. You saved me from a life of hollow performance. That is legacy enough." She thought of the dowager's cruelty, the society that would judge her, the challenges ahead. Then she thought of her mother's words, carried in her father's memory. "The bravest thing is refusing to apologize for being yourself." "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you," he answered. "More than duty, more than legacy, more than fear." 5 years later, the gardens at Harlington Manor bloomed with late summer roses. Constance sat beneath the oak tree, her daughter Catherine, named for her mother, playing with wooden blocks nearby. At 3 years old, she had Adrian's gray eyes and Constance's stubborn determination. A carriage appeared on the drive. Constance recognized it immediately, her father's modest conveyance, now improved slightly by Adrian's insistence on proper axles and springs. But it was the second carriage that surprised her. Elegant, expensive, bearing the Harlington crest. Adrian emerged from the house, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. 5 years of marriage had softened some of his aristocratic edges. He smiled more freely now, laughed without restraint. Their home was filled with debate and music, and the comfortable chaos of genuine living. "Is that?" Constance began. "My mother," Adrian confirmed, his expression unreadable. "She wrote last week. Asked if she might visit. Meet her granddaughter." Catherine looked up from her blocks. "Grandmama, your other grandmother, darling," Constance said carefully. The dowager emerged from the carriage, older now, moving with less certainty. She wore gray instead of her usual dramatic colors. Her face, when she looked toward the house, held something Constance had never seen before: uncertainty. Thomas Hartley exited the first carriage and immediately scooped Catherine into his arms, providing a buffer of normalcy. The dowager approached slowly. She stopped several feet away, her hands clasped before her. "Your Grace," she addressed Constance formally, "thank you for receiving me." The title still felt strange after 5 years, but Constance had learned to wear it with grace. "You are welcome, Lady Cordelia." The dowager's eyes moved to Catherine, now showing her grandfather a caterpillar she'd found. "She is beautiful. She is wonderful," Constance corrected gently. "Curious, intelligent, kind. Like her mother." The words emerged quiet, almost painful. Silence stretched between them. "I was wrong," the dowager said finally. "About you. About what makes a worthy duchess. I told myself I was protecting the family legacy, but I was only protecting my own pride." She looked at Constance directly. "You have given my son something I never could: permission to be human. This estate, under your stewardship, has become known for compassion rather than cold tradition. The tenants speak of you with genuine affection." Constance felt Adrian's hand find her shoulder, steadying her. "I do not expect forgiveness," the dowager continued. "I simply hoped, perhaps, to know my granddaughter, if you would permit it." Constance looked up at Adrian. He nodded slightly. The choice was hers. She thought of her own mother, denied her family for choosing love. She thought of the poison that resentment breeds, passed from generation to generation like tainted heirlooms. "Catherine," she called gently, "come meet your grandmother." The little girl toddled over, fearless as children often are. She studied the dowager with solemn curiosity. "You're crying, Grandmama." "Yes, darling. Sometimes people cry when they are happy." Catherine considered this seriously, then offered the dowager her caterpillar. "He makes me happy. You can hold him." The dowager took the caterpillar with shaking hands, and something in her face crumbled and rebuilt simultaneously. She looked at Constance with undisguised gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. The town never fully accepted Constance, but they learned to respect her. Her literary salons became famous for their intellectual rigor. Her charity work transformed Harlington's reputation from cold nobility to engaged compassion. Adrian resigned his parliamentary seat to focus on estate management and his family. He never regretted it. The dowager became an unexpected ally, using her influence to smooth Constance's entry into society in ways pride had previously prevented. She remained prickly, occasionally judgmental, but she loved her granddaughter fiercely and learned, slowly, to appreciate the daughter-in-law who had saved her son. Thomas Hartley closed his shop eventually, moving to a cottage on the Harlington estate, where he cataloged Adrian's extensive library and taught Catherine her letters. On quiet evenings, when the household settled into peaceful routine, Adrian would find Constance in the library. He would sit beside her, taking her hand, his grandmother's sapphire ring catching the lamplight. "Do you ever regret it?" he would ask. "Choosing this difficult path?" And Constance would answer, always the same, "Never. Not for a single moment." Because some loves are worth fighting for. Some lives are worth rebuilding. And some families are made not through blood and breeding, but through the brave choice to see each other truly, flaws and all, and love anyway. That is the legacy of Harlington Manor. Not titles or tradition, but the simple, profound courage of refusing to apologize for love. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It amazes me to know how far these stories travel, from London to Texas, New York to Hong Kong. Your support means the world and helps me bring you more tales of courage, love, and the strength it takes to choose your own path. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are worthy, exactly as they are. Until next time, remember, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to diminish yourself for anyone's comfort. Thank you for watching.